should be starting now. And
Hi.
hey, Brooke, just going over some of the administrative stuff here. Okay, let's get everyone checked in. I see that we have a Lindsay Lupino. Ms. Lupino, if you could unmute and let me know who you're representing here today.
I'm representing Five Below. We are their national sign vendor.
Okay.
From SEMA Network, sorry.
Okay. Brooke Galini, who is at Atlantic Sign Company. Welcome,
Yep.
Brooke.
Thank you. Sorry, I was late. My computer decided to not function.
No problem at all. And then there's an MG. Here's MG present. MG, if you are there, you'll have to unmute. Okay.
I'm not sure who that is.
Okay. Are you expecting anyone else to join us?
No,
Brooke or
it should
Lindsay?
have just been Lindsay and I. I'm not sure who that is. Do you know
Okay.
Lindsay?
Okay. Sure. Well, that person.
And they're gone.
Okay. Yeah, I've got hearings scheduled all day today, and I think that they generally will come to the same. The links will send you to the same place, and so it could just be someone who's here for a later hearing. Okay. We also have Trey Sheldon, our zoning plans examiner, and welcome, Trey. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. I need to read through our hearing script, and then we'll get started. This is the May 24th, 2023 session of the zoning hearing examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. I'm the zoning hearing examiner. Case before us today is case number ZH20230063. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and any potential opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and supplemental rules of the zoning hearing examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or an opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant, the applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. If there were anyone here from the public, they would have an opportunity to speak after the applicant had presented its case. I'll give our zoning plans examiner an opportunity to provide any testimony in addition to a staff report. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to this application, the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut that testimony, and then finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or make any comments. In the event of any technical difficulties, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those on the fly. Last thing I need to do is swear in all of our witnesses. If you intend on providing any testimony here today, the zoning code requires that I swear you in. So if that's you, if you could raise your right hand at this time, I need everyone to answer out loud. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Brooke, I didn't get it. Okay, awesome. All right, fantastic. Yeah, gotcha. Maybe there might just be like a slight delay or something that's happening right now.
Yeah, my internet's been weird today, so sorry.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll try and work through that. Okay, who's going to be taking the lead on telling me about this particular application?
Me, Lindsay. I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation I wanted to kind of go through if you guys were okay with that.
Sure.
Okay, great. Let me just share my screen. Give me one moment. All right, so can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so we are here for the Five Below in Hyde Park Plaza in Cincinnati, Ohio. We are asking the board to consider a variance request for signage for 76 square feet of signage. This is just an outline of our deck, so I'm going to keep going through here. This is the site plan of where the Five Below is located within the Hyde Park Plaza Shopping Center. It is zoned CGA, Commercial General. It is a very large and different place shopping center, and where Five Below is located, you can see here is in the back corner.
Yeah, about how many square feet is that actual?
That is a great question. That's what I'm getting into next, David. If you see here, this is the site plan, just to kind of show the setback and the approximate difference, but the Five Below space itself is almost 11,000 square feet of retail space. It's in between an anchor Marshall's tenant and some smaller inline tenant spaces. And as you can see here, the storefront distance is set back approximately about 875 feet from Paxton Avenue, which is a pretty far distance for vehicular traffic. Okay, oops, sorry, jumping ahead here. As you can see here, the existing code is not to exceed 2 square feet per linear feet of building frontage. The blue architectural feature counts towards our total square footage allowance. The Five Below's tenant space is 10,933 square feet with a 60-foot storefront width and 186-foot depth. So it's a pretty large tenant space with a smaller storefront because the store is mostly in the back, which is, for this size tenant being like a sub anchor, we're hoping the board can consider our request of the 76 square foot of additional signage. As you can see to the left here, the channel letters by themselves in the drawing that we submitted are the 40.5 square feet. That is if the whole text is blocked together. If we were to measure the Five Below letters and the hot stuff, cool prices tagline separate boxes around those individual channel letters, that makes the square footage of the sign 117.8 square feet, which would be a code compliant sign that fits under the 120 square feet. So really, we're hoping that the board can consider our variance application to allow the 76 square feet of blue background because the channel letters are white. We really need that blue contrasting background to separate between the building and the sign.
Could you walk me through that again? Are you saying if you don't take in the blue background, then it's compliant?
Yes, no problem. In the staff report, it was saying, that we're proposing a total area of 196 square feet. That is this entire blue background around the sign.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were to, so the 196 is the 7 feet by 28 feet. If we were to just box the channel letters around like a bigger, that's just the sign itself. That's what the 140.5 square feet that is listed in the drawing and in the staff report. That's how the sign is being calculated here. If we were to actually,
David, not the blue. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think so. So yeah, in the first square feet one diagram you have up there, that would be 140.
Yes.
Okay, but that excludes the blue around the outside of that. And
yes.
then if you exclude the blue and then just isolate the letters in square feet part 2 there, then you're compliant at 117.
Right. It's just taking away that dead space that's since the tagline is smaller than the actual name of the business. So it's just removing the dead space from the signage area.
Gotcha. Okay.
Any other questions, David? Or I think it's
not on this particular slide, no.
Okay. All right, great. So as you can see here, this is the proposed storefront rendering, which represents our variance application. As you can see, the sign does fit pretty well within the facade. It's not super large, it's not super small. And with the store setback, we feel that this is like the minimum requirement that Five Below will need to be a successful brick and mortar store. We'll explain that kind of more as we go through the slide here. We have a National Safety Council, some stats regarding accidents in parking lots. It's reported that their findings show that 2/3 of drivers may be pulling into shopping centers distracted. Shopping centers don't have the traditional wayfinding signs like mall or other mixed-use properties. The building sign really represents the best way for vehicular and pedestrian traffic to navigate safely. There is a freestanding sign by the road, but that is kind of set off more back towards the Kroger entrance, where you can't see the Five Below space until you've already passed that ground sign. So we're hoping that the slightly larger sign with that blue background will kind of help our shoppers and the customers be able to navigate safely to that tenant space in the back part of the shopping center. As you can see here, if you're coming from Paxton Avenue, approaching the Chase Bank building, there is no visibility to the Five Below tenant space since they are in this back corner back here. Sorry, I don't know why it's going so fast. If you come up this way and then you were to make a left right after the Chase building, this is where you'd be able to see that facade with the blue background and the white channel letters. Again, the tenant ground sign is all the way over here. So we're hoping with the larger sign, this will help our customers navigate safely into that shopping center here to get back to the Five Below store. Oh, geez. Sorry about that. And then last but not least, if you're coming this way, this is after you've already passed the ground sign. This is where we would see the visibility of the facade with the blue background with the white channel letters.
What and that intersection is that where the light is there on Paxton?
I believe so. It's right after this ground sign, kind of where this white car is right here, where my mouse is.
Yep.
Also, one of our other really good reasonings of why we need the larger business sign is signs attract 50% of a startup's new business. Five Below is kind of new into the Ohio area, so they're really relying on utilizing all signs, branding, marketing initiatives to be a successful brick and mortar space. E-commerce and COVID really put a hurting on these type of retail establishments. So it's pretty critical that that the businesses and the community stakeholders can come together to help these businesses thrive, which turns into economic success and just development within the community itself. Site branding is one of the most critical factors of a business success. So if our customers aren't used to seeing the brands or they've never seen the brand, it's really that brand recall is what's essential to thrive in today's economy. Also, our next slide is showing these are some other Five Below stores in the Ohio region. As you can see, Five Below does really utilize on that larger blue background with the white channel letters. The blue is just a blue painted architectural feature, which we understand will count towards the sign, but we're hoping that with the channel letters themselves being under what the city code requires, that the board would be considerate in our 76 square foot of blue paint that would be allowed. One thing to note here is you can see this hot stuff cool prices. This is an older design intent that Five Below that launched at one point, but since post-COVID world, they're really trying to utilize on that Five Below and the hot stuff cool prices tagline, which are individual letters. It's just kind of a brand refresh, hoping to, get back from the post-COVID world and just could be consistent with their branding throughout. The signage that they are proposing on this building, if I can just go back to show you again real quick. This Five Below hot stuff cool prices is pretty much 9 out of 10 sites that we're doing have this type of branding on the building now. So it's really a newer initiative. But again, as you can see from the other 5 Ohio locations, it's pretty standard for Five Below to have those white channel letters with the blue background. I just have a couple more slides. The next one is just showing the surrounding tenants within the shopping center. The Staples building does have a red colored background with white letters as well. These tenant spaces have larger widths, which explains why they're allowed to have the larger signs, but with Five Below's majority of their business being in the depth, we're hoping that we're showing that our sign would stay consistent within the shopping center for that size tenant space. So this is our last slide. We hope that we've demonstrated the need for Five Below to increase its signage allowance. We feel that it doesn't produce an undesirable or detriment change. In fact, we demonstrated that it's within the character of the existing shopping center for their size tenant space. We also feel that it would make the shopping center safer by being visible in advance for safe motor vehicle operation. We don't feel that we can achieve what we're looking for other than the variance just to be a successful brick and mortar store. We do not believe it's substantial and it is the minimum requirement for safety and brand visibility. And we do not believe that the approval will have an adverse effect on the neighborhood or the district surrounding, since it's highly commercialized. And it's just really necessary for the brand Brick and Nation, again, to be a successful brick and mortar store within the center.
Okay.
So that is the end of my slide. If you have any questions,
yeah. Could you go back to the
sure.
Well, the actual rendering of what the facade's going to look like?
Yes, I can. Give me 1 second to share again.
And my question related to that is, well, is the facade actually going to be changing, like the actual design of the facade from what it previously was with Joanne? Because this is the old Joanne Fabrics, right?
Yes, that is correct. They are going to be doing facade renovations on the building, which
to
is
add the brown there.
Yes.
Okay. And do you know how big Joanne Fabric sign was?
I do not.
The previous sign?
I don't
Trey,
know.
do you have that information?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I would also have to, I guess, look through the permit to make sure that they didn't occupy more than one tenant space. I don't know, because there are other smaller other businesses to the left.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. And so the main hardship you've identified is that you won't be able to see the sign from the street without the variance. Is that right?
Yes.
I mean,
Five Below, like I said, they like the larger sign as they can, but we feel that this size sign really fits well within the facade. It's not taking up the entire oyster shell color behind it. So it's really just, keeping the largest size sign to be successful within the space, but not, not asking for too much, being too much of the facade.
Gotcha. So with this larger sign, you think it is realistic that people would be able to see it from the street? It just seems so far away. I mean, I'm familiar with this area. I'm looking at the street view, so I know that's not, totally accurate in terms of how the optics looks, but from the street, it just seems like such a large distance that even if I granted the variance, that it wouldn't actually make the sign any more visible. But I mean, I need to do site visits on this so I can take a closer look, but it just seems like one of those businesses that, most people are going to be seeing the sign for the first time after they enter the parking lot here.
The sign is, so the letters are 45 inches, which roughly translate to about 450 feet of visibility. Like clear, easy to read visibility is 450 feet. But you should be able to recognize it about between, I think 750 and 1,000 feet away.
Yeah, with the blue height being that 7 foot, we're looking for the customer to see the architectural background as well as not just the white channel letters.
Okay, so could you walk me through that a little bit more? Because it sounds like you guys do have some sort of visual recognition data. So if this were restricted to what's allowed in the zoning code, you're saying that it would not be able to reach the eyes of someone from the street, but it could if you had this requested variance, and this is the minimum relief necessary to reach those eyeballs on the street.
I think ideally, to be honest, bigger would be better because it is set back so far. The 45-inch letter set, I think, is the standard 5 below. Is that right, Lindsay?
Yeah, it's actually a little bit smaller than their standard, but again, they're not trying to ask for too much and being realistic with what the facade looks like and what would work for them from a branding perspective. So they did go a little bit smaller than they normally would have.
Gotcha. But when you say 45-inch, are you talking about the height of the letters on the sign?
Yes. Sorry,
Okay.
I have a site that tells me, but it doesn't go to, the website that I use doesn't go to 45 inches. The height goes to 36 inches. And so just as as a way to kind of understand the math, it says the maximum visible distance on a 36-inch letter sign is 900 feet. So by keeping it at that 45, they'll be able to visibly see it from Paxton Road, but they won't be able to see it if they're coming in on the Kroger side, because the first thing you see when you pull into that shopping center is Kroger and Starbucks and whatever else is right there, like that Jersey Mike's and stuff. So
yeah, Brooke, I also have a chart that says it goes between 42 and 48, so we would be somewhere in the middle, but it says it's like say 420 to 2000 is really where those two line up from a minimum maximum readable distance.
Okay, so how far is the sign from Paxton?
It is 875 feet setback from Paxton Avenue.
Okay.
So it'll be visible as you're coming, it'll be visible when you're coming in from Paxton, but it's not going to be so much like, I can't explain. I don't know how to explain this. Because it has that blue backer with the white letters, that's what's going to catch your eye first. And so that's why, that's what's important there. But then the size of the letters, being able to see it from Paxton is obviously the goal because it's in such a weird shopping center. And she's right, you're going to pass that monument sign before you even get to the entrance to 5 Below, like into the parking lot. And then you can either go to the right and you end up in the Kroger side, or you go to the left and you have to go all the way back down to go to the 5 Below.
Gotcha. And Brooke, you just read off a statistic. You said 37 inches is viewable from 900 feet. Is that right?
36 inches is
viewable.
Maximum distance is 900 feet.
Gotcha. All right. So, I mean, that would suggest that these could be smaller, right? And still be seen from Paxton.
Paxton setback, what, 800? Is that what you said? Well, that's the maximum visibility. So the way that they do it for readability is so this is
a lot less.
This is a 45-inch sign letter height. So it's 450 feet to read it. The 36 sign is 360 to read it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just saying that because you can see the sign, but that doesn't necessarily you're not going to know what it is unless you have the good eyesight, which we all don't.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And that ground sign at the intersection there that has the Rimke and Staples, Five Below will have a sign there as well, letting people know that it's in the plaza somewhere.
Yes, it's just, yeah, it's in the plaza somewhere.
Okay.
But that's that sign, you have to pass that sign to turn into where, because that sign's at the intersection where you can only go straight or turn into the shopping center. And so once you pass that, if you don't see it on there, then you have to go down to the Chase and turn in there. So by the time you see that sign, by the time you're at the light turning into the shopping center, you've already passed that sign. So potentially you're looking for something on a pole sign or on a monument sign that's behind you.
But don't you think that I'm sorry, I always give you such a hard time here, Brooke. But don't you think they have a better chance of seeing the ground sign at the intersection than they do looking left in a sea of signs and cars and
I think
other
that
things to see it 900 feet away?
I think the bigger picture is when you turn into the lot.
Mhm.
If it, because it is going to be between, it's right next to that Marshall's, and yeah, they're going to do the facade, so it's going to pop out about the same, I think, probably as Marshall's. But I think that when you're in the parking lot, and we've all been in that parking lot, it's a nightmare. But I think that having the visibility in the lot is what's more important than the visibility. The street's going to show you where you're, like, the sign's going to be on that thing on the pylon, but so is, Marshall's, Staples, Michael's, everything. It doesn't tell you where it is once you get into the lot.
Mhm.
And so the goal of the larger sign is to help people find it further down into that corner.
Gotcha.
Because it is such
in line with Marshall's. I just wanted to show you guys that here as well.
Mhm.
because even from when you pull into the lot, let me do some math here really fast. So when you pull in to the lot when you make that right into the parking lot, you're still about 600 feet away from the entrance of the store. So the 45-inch letter that you can see 400 feet away, like to read it, you'll be able to read it from when you enter that store. But if it was 35 feet, you wouldn't be able to, because then it's 350. And so the readable part of it.
Gotcha. So I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
So when you pull in, the sign is still about 500-600 feet away from the entrance.
Mhm.
So the 45 square foot or the 45-inch letter set gets you a readable visibility of 450. So
you
that
can just read it from farther away within the parking lot.
Yeah, and so that you know. Because again, I think we keep going back to this, but I think it's a valid point. This is not a very user-friendly shopping center. And it's hard to maneuver because you can end up, I've ended up on like the back side of it trying to figure out how to get to the other side. It's just not very user-friendly. So the amount, any sort of signage is going to help just eliminate the random driving around.
Okay. Anything else before I hear from Trey on this? Did you guys want to comment on the request for the hanging sign, projecting sign?
Lindsay?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So we're the hanging sign that we're showing in the plans is kind of just the Five Below standard that they use on all stores. So I think they're fine with if you want it to be a certain way. They just really like to have that identifier for pedestrian traffic to know, like, here's our entrance, come into this space, because you can't see the building wall sign. So if you guys have certain standards that you like to keep it consistent within the center or whatever, we're okay with that. It's just the landlord approved their typical standard details. So that's what we're showing. But we have, other shopping centers where we keep it consistent with the other ones. So we're fine with that. We just want the goal is it for pedestrian traffic to know where their doors are to come into their space.
Sure. Okay. All right. Anything else before Trey weighs in?
Nope, I think we're okay for now.
Trey.
Sure. As to that, because we're discussing a projecting sign, had this been more in keeping with the other signs that are there, they're just, 3 feet in width instead of 5 feet. The projecting sign, I would have no problem with that at all. I just didn't, usually there's some hardship associated with the granting of a variance, and there are many other businesses there. There's kind of David, there's a pedestrian walkway. Essentially, the building kind of cantilevers out over a protected walkway, and then shop fronts are probably, I don't know, what do you think, 15 feet? Yeah, she's showing it right there, and it's in the staff report. What Brooke's showing there is typical of what the signs look like along there. They're usually, most of them, I think nearly every tenant has those. They're mounted as a projecting sign to the interior of the brick columns that support the breezeway roof up above, and kind of a parapet roof that surrounds the facades. Yeah, I mean, if they were to do I think at that point you're not clearly identifying, somebody who might be strolling up. They might be at a nail salon up the way, or a cafe or something, and identifying to them. So I certainly have absolutely no problem recommending, approve of the sign if it was, similarly mounted in 3 feet instead of 5 feet. I think it's perfectly visible to a pedestrian walking underneath the canopy. So that was the only reason there's just no apparent hardship, and just if it was consistent with the other signage throughout the mall. I don't mean that it has to be a wood hanging sign. This isn't Vermont. We're not trying to have a carved wood sign or something. So, but just if they're consistent as a projecting sign supposed to be a maximum of 3 feet, the maximum width or whatever. So I wouldn't have any problem with that. As to the wall sign, the only thing we don't want to, typically we met for staff meeting about this one, because there are bigger signs in this plaza, certainly, and it's just simply that they have much bigger frontage. That if you're the Kroger, you're the anchor tenant, and so if they've got a 200-foot facade, they're going to be able to. Their signage probably isn't even as big as it could be, frankly, Kroger's. So if they've got a 200-foot wide store, they could have 400 square foot sign. In this instance, I think if you turn. Also, to back up for a minute, one thing, like a ground sign wasn't a part of this package, like for the permits that I reviewed. So I don't know, Brooke, is that?
It's
like
a tenant
permit.
It's already,
tenant, okay.
Yeah, it's already there. It's
Okay.
the ground sign is existing. We're just putting the tenant panel.
Okay, yeah, I just never saw. I don't think I saw a rendering of it or whatever. I don't know.
It should have been in the set, but we'll make sure. Okay. But yeah, it's just a tenant panel change. We're not building anything.
Okay, great. So, I mean, if you have to, like, if you, for example, down the road, if you do, pending whatever David's decision is, but if you do decide to revise the size of the, the projecting sign, then make sure, I'll try to go back and make sure whether that panel's in there. Sometimes people do those separately as zoning certificates of compliance when they're just a panel change. You know what I mean? A vinyl panel change, but
I don't. It wasn't in there, but we'll make sure. Yeah, I'll confirm it. There shouldn't be any issue with that one, because it's just size of whatever the panel is.
Okay, well, that's helpful for David and I, but because I was questioning whether you had the right to have I think if you have the right to have that panel that identifies that, and I was questioning whether, since I didn't see that, I was questioning whether you had any access to the ground sign, you know what I mean, to the ground sign. I didn't know whether that was just for the 10 largest tenants or something. I didn't know.
No, it's a 4x4. It's a 4 square foot tenant panel. It's not big.
Okay. Yeah, it's actually a half panel. It's not a full panel.
Right. Okay. So that's helpful to understand that. David, to the ground sign, we discussed it at staff meeting, and everybody's highly familiar with this plaza. And I think other than some locational variance requests for the Chase Bank, I think in the like the McDonald's that has just some smaller logo things on the facades because they face different directions. I don't think there's been any kind of approval for this kind of relief dimensionally that I can find in all of our records. So when we met at staff meeting, I was asked by the zoning administrator to, look at that, and I did, and I don't think that there weren't any substantial. There was relief granted for that ground sign, by the way, to enable just that, for there to be more panels on it. It was about half that size before, David, and I know that my colleague Doug Owen was the zoning plan examiner for that, and so that ground sign was granted relief precisely because of what the two applicants were discussing. It's a very far distance back in there, and the orientation of the building is such that, like, without that ground sign, as Brooke was saying, if you were taking a right into the shopping center at the main entrance, I don't think you'd see the sign at all because it would be perpendicular to where you're driving. I mean, it'd be facing completely 90 degrees out into the sea of parking, and so that was my only aspect to it. I just
Trey,
didn't.
did you guys discuss at all the Staples sign? Because I don't know. I guess what I'm kind of thinking about right now is the applicant's point that if there was no blue background here, that it would be close to conforming, if not conforming.
That's correct. If you do just channel letters and so on, when people have like a branding thing. So I'll use an example. There was for many years around here at Huntington Bank in this area that had Kelly Green. They wanted their Kelly Green signs with the white lettering on them and so on. So if this was just channel letters, like some, another business did, if they were just mounting the channel letters to that instead of having like a framed out sort of blue background for it, the signage, yeah, I mean, it could be compliant.
Okay, it would be less square footage. You can confirm that, right?
Yes, that's correct. That's
okay.
Correct.
So do you guys know anything about the Staples then, Trey? Because they've got the red background to make the white pop more, and
I don't know.
it appears that's pretty large.
To get into
yeah. Okay, that's fair.
I need some of that stuff is, or some of it. It looks like it's actual, not. It looks like the entire facade. I think isn't the entire facade like a metal material?
It's the sign band, I believe.
Facade, but it's a lot of the facade.
It's like the sign band of the facade, and then it's framed with the columns.
But Trey, we would calculate that the red background is part of the sign, right?
If it's part of the actual, yeah, if it's like a rectangle that defines that, if it's part of an architectural feature, like like the whole facade or something, that's kind of a different matter.
Got it.
So what's the difference between Mike? I'm sorry to ask this question. What's the difference between the red, like, how come the blue isn't considered to be an architectural detail, and we're just installing the sign on the architectural detail? Because the sign itself is, the sign faces within code. It's the blue backer that bumps it over. So what's the difference between the red on the facade for Staples being an architectural detail and the blue on the facade for Five Below being an architectural detail? So
I don't know. I'd have to look at the Staples. I'd have to do Google Street View here to look at it or something.
Okay, that was just my question. Yeah. I think that matters.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, it doesn't sound like Trey has that information handy, right, which is fair. But let me. I don't know, Trey. Did you have anything else you wanted to?
Just a lot of the stores that did that. It wasn't as a non-issue. At least some of the permit approvals and so on that I was looking at, the Marshalls and the Krogers and so on, literally have just kind of a neutral background on it, and they have truly just channel letters. You know what I mean, on the sign, like the Kroger, for example, it's just white with a blue channel letters, the white channel letters with a blue, like a blue with a blue border around it. So I can't speak to what if Kroger's painted its entire building blue. I don't know. I mean, we wouldn't consider the whole building a sign at that point.
I just pulled up the fabric sign. on Google Earth, and I don't know if you can see it, but it basically takes up the whole center facade above the front door. So I can take my phone. I had to do it on my phone because it kept logging me up, and see how much space it's taking up.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so I feel like that's about the same size, if not bigger, than what we're looking at. It even kind of hangs over that one edge, but just we just talked about it, so I was just
Sure, right. Gotcha.
And I have no idea on that, I'd have to.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
forge stuff, but I can't research some of these, some signage is actually not even digitally, you know what I mean, in our system and so on. If signs up for 30 years ago or something. I think that store was there for a very long time, but
yeah. It's hard to say exactly how big it is, right, Brooke? Especially with that new facade, because it's just.
we'd have to go look at
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was trying to goals, but it doesn't even.
Okay. Trey, sorry, anything else?
not really. I just felt that going 35 miles an hour out on the street and being able to even remotely identify what this is, you'd almost have to know where you were going ahead of time. That's all I'm getting at. If you're driving headed, I think that would be northeast. If you were headed toward Marburg and away from like I-71 across here, and if you manage to drive past if you manage to not catch it at the ground sign and you continued on, you'd have to look over your shoulder while driving 35 miles an hour to see the sign basically from the street. And approaching from the other way, it's the maximum distance. You'd be like almost 900 feet away. So I just, for my part, view this as you will, but I felt it was not legible at that distance in terms of wayfinding.
I think the other piece of it too is not only from being visible from the road itself, but vehicular and pedestrian traffic within the center, because of how large the center is. Having that larger sign in there, if you have somebody coming from the Staples per se, or the Panera, knowing where, like, to be able to see the Five Below store with it being in that side profile corner, the larger sign just makes the overall shopping center safer with navigating traffic, I think, is another piece to it. Not only just being visible from the road, but being safely navigating within the center itself as well.
It is an unfortunate orientation because it's otherwise you almost have to be out in the parking lot looking at it, because if you took a hard right in at as she just mentioned, next to the Panera, and you came in the main entrance, you wouldn't see any of the signs down that way because they'd all be perpendicular. They'd be sideways to you, basically, because you're driving in a lane right next to that.
Yeah, there's also the other drive lane within that shopping center that is back that's where it would really increase the safety of the vehicular traffic within the shopping center.
Yeah, you'd essentially have to turn in next to the bank or the McDonald's there and then proceed to finally be able to see it at some point.
I did a little research on some of the other signs that are out there to see if there's any that we installed, so I could find out how big things are. I did the My Eye Doctor that's out there, and their facade is about the same width as what was there for Joann's. So, and that one is 23 feet ish. So that gives you an idea of how big the Joann sign would have been.
I'm not sure it does. Do you want to spell it out for me?
So the My Eye Doctor sign is 31 square feet, and it's a 25-inch letter set. So that means that you can only see that sign from 250 feet away. And it doesn't have any, it's white on white. So the Joann sign was about the same with their frontage was about the same. So we're going to say 23 feet long. So based on the picture, their sign is at least 23 feet long.
And I'm going to go ahead and say that those are probably 35 to, if not 40-inch letters. So that puts your square footage at, I have to do math. That puts that sign at 76 square feet without, and that's just the Joanne part, not the taglines. So it's going to be about the same with the tagline underneath it and the.
Jen, estimate is Joanne was 23 feet wide approximately and 36 inch. And you're asking for 28 feet wide and 45 inch. Right.
Yeah. Yes. The letters are
Okay.
45 plus, but our facade is bigger because they're redoing it. Like, you know.
Yeah.
And again, I'll reiterate this and you can do what you want with it. If we did not have that blue backer, the sign would be within code. So I don't know what the difference is between Staples having the red backer and Five Below.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so let's leave it at that. I think I used to live near this, so I know it pretty well, but I haven't been there in a really long time. I think I might do a site visit on this one before I make a decision. I think I think everyone here has made good points on this. I think the adverse effects are really minimal, if at all. When it comes to like regulating within these shopping centers, it gets sort of difficult because it just doesn't have that big of an impact outside of the shopping center. But I will say, I don't think that this is going to be very visible from the street. I don't think, honestly, that stores should be trying to draw attention from drivers with so much going on in this district. I think it could be more distracting than anything. But once you get in there, I don't know. I mean, because I also have to consider, if we're, how big are we going to let signs get here? If everyone's allowed to have, sort of just unlimited signage here, then it could get a little out of control for people outside of the shopping center. So I don't have a huge problem with the projecting sign. I think I may limit the width a little bit just to be more consistent with the rest of the pedestrian signs there. Let me spend just a little bit more time with the wall sign. I think you guys have made good points about it being otherwise compliant besides the blue background. But I'd like to get a sense for it on the ground and from my vehicle. So yeah, so having said that, once I do make a decision on this, I will, Brooke, as you know, I'm not sure Ms. Lupino is as familiar. So I have to do a written decision for my formal decision. I put it into a PDF. As soon as I'm finished, I email it to everybody who's in the hearing here today as soon as it's done. And so you'll have a copy of that really just moments after it's complete. As soon as you guys have that, assuming that there's some approvals and you want to obtain the permits, you'll be able to work with Trey as soon as you have that decision. Any questions about anything here or any final points you guys want to make on this? Okay.
Nope, just really, like we said, safety and brand recognition is really what's important for our client. And like as Brooke stated, if the blue wasn't counting the sign would be compliant. So it's not like we're asking for this sign and every other customer that comes in is going to want a variance. We're keeping the size sign compliant. We're just asking for the blue not to be counted toward, or counting it, but allowing us to have it to keep that brand recognition. So I really appreciate your time and going through my presentation. I know you're not as familiar with me. So again, I appreciate the time and effort and everything. So we look forward to your decision.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks. And yeah, thank you for the presentation. It was certainly helpful to be able to see that as we work through the PowerPoint. So you all will be receiving an email from me as soon as the decision is finished. If you have any questions in the meantime, you can reach out to me directly at the email I have here on the screen. I'm sure Trey would be happy to answer questions as well if you have those. All right. Thank you
Right.
all.
Thank you
Have a
so
great day.
much.
I'll see you in an
Thanks.
hour.